Welcome to the Ringer NFL show. Sheil Kapadia here with Diante Lee and Steven Ruiz. If you're listening or watching on FanDuel TV, welcome. If you're listening on Spotify, welcome. Week 4 in the books. Not quite a quarter of the season. We can't say that yet, but some narratives took shape, I feel like, this weekend, Diante. You know, some stuff. Now you're saying I got 4 games worth to look at. I can start saying what I want to say about the way this season's going to go.
100%. And this for me was probably like my biggest sicko, type of viewing experience. I was saying before we jumped on, had my personal laptop, work laptop up. They had different games on, had the full multi-view up on the main TV. So my ADHD was 100% satisfied through the day.
At one point during the second half of the first window of games, I had all 8 games up on 2 different screens. I was quad boxing on 2 different screens. I had all 8 games up. It was a sicko moment for me too. That's
a young man's game. I don't even go down those streets anymore. Some things you don't even try at my age, and that would be one of them. But I was tuned in to the Sunday night game. We thought we got to get a classic. The Bills don't get blown out. The Ravens have their backs against the wall. But what happens? The Ravens come out and they crush the Buffalo Bills. We're going to start with our big takeaways. And my big takeaway is that that's the Ravens team we expected to see. I don't think many teams in the NFL have that type of performance in their bag where they can come out against a Bills team who had not lost a regular season game by more than 6 points in the last 3 seasons. And they come out and everything's working. Derrick Henry runs for 199 yards. Lamar Jackson's doing what he needs to do. But I would say most impressive was that, and what I learned the most was about that Ravens defense. When you hold Josh Allen and that Bills offense to 1 touchdown, to 10 points, to 12 first downs, their fewest first downs in a game in the last 5 years, that really caught my attention. So Ravens have had kind of an unsettled start to their season, Ruiz. But now after week 4, it's like, no, this is kind of the team we were expecting to see, and they're going to be in the mix the rest of the way.
I'm fully convinced that Raiders game was fake. It didn't happen. It was a deep fake. Someone edited it. It was Photoshopped. I don't care. I didn't watch any of it, and I refuse to believe that it happened. This was what it was supposed to look like coming into the offseason, especially with Derrick Henry. Like, I don't know if it was supposed to look like 199 yards and 270 total rushing yards for the team, but the idea was to bring in Derrick Henry and take some of that playmaking burden and some of that attention off of Lamar Jackson, who had been the main source of explosive plays, both in the run game and the pass game coming into this year. Not anymore. Derrick Henry is leading the NFL in rushing by about 35 yards, and Lamar Jackson is 9th in rushing. These two are on pace to combine for 3,306 yards this season.
Wow. Oh my God.
They've combined for 700 yards over the first 4 weeks. It's insane. And like you said, we finally saw the version of the defense that we saw all throughout last season. It wasn't just that Josh Allen struggled. It was how he struggled. Like, he had to hold on to the ball for a long time, which makes you believe, like, of course we have to watch the film to know what was happening downfield, but it makes you believe that receivers weren't getting open. And that had been the problem with the Ravens defense. The run defense had been good. The pass coverage, especially when in man coverage, wasn't sticking tight to routes. But if you watched the film, you were like, all right, it's just a matter of time. They're going to clear this up. And we saw it tonight. And this looked like the best football team in the NFL right now. It was definitely the most impressive performance of the season so far.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, Diante. And when you look at what they did defensively, early on, they're giving up some explosive plays. But to Ruiz's point, that really stuck out to me, because so much of the conversation about these two quarterbacks, when we talk about them on this show, I feel like our conversations are, did he have to be Superman tonight, or did he not have to be Superman tonight? We know they can be. They can put the cape on, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, how did they win that game? Because the quarterback was incredible. Previously, the first 3 weeks of the season, we were talking about, hey, Josh Allen, he hasn't had to just put the whole team on his back. Stuff is within structure. He looks comfortable. It's efficient. In this game, though, he was holding the football, 8 quarterback hits by the Baltimore Ravens. Even the 1 touchdown they scored, he's fallen out of bounds and chucks one 50 yards, which we enjoy watching, but that's not how you want to live. So what did you think, Diante? Tells us more about the Bills offense or the Ravens defense, that type of game?
I say the Ravens defense. And it's funny because early in the game, I was kind of concerned, right? Like, I felt like, you could tell that Baltimore was playing pretty soft in coverage, trying to just play, like, take away explosives, make him play more underneath. And what we had seen from Josh Allen over the last couple of weeks had led me to believe that he can beat a defense just as well being forced to play that game as being able to play bombs away. But I think you saw as the game went on and the more that Buffalo was trying to pry that defense open to find explosives, especially once the game script got away from them and took away the opportunities to run the ball and really play dink and dunk offense. That's really where I thought you saw Baltimore be at its best defensively, because it was playing so well on the back end, not allowing them to just push the ball down the field. And I think that speaks to what this secondary is like and why we have spent so much time talking about, even with the loss of Mike McDonald, why they could be pretty stable on a week-by-week basis. When you think about the guys that they can move around, whether it's Marlon Humphrey inside and outside, you see Kyle Hamilton in the slot at times, deep and others. Marcus Williams looks healthy and good, when he's on the field. Nate Wiggins, a rookie, has been a really good contributor for them early in the season. They have so many pieces that they can use in coverage, and I think that's kind of allowed their pass rush to develop slowly, and we got to see that in the second half. Odafe Owe was starting to make a much bigger impact. You saw Nnamdi Madubuike really pushing the pocket and making him uncomfortable when he did have to hold the ball. So I just think that to Steven's point, this is a team that we thought we were going to see. And I think if you take the fourth quarter, or really from like the halfway point in the third quarter through the end of the game against the Raiders out of the picture, I would say that they've been the best team, one of the best teams in the league from wire to wire in the NFL. They've just caught some bad breaks with penalties and turnover luck. I think for the first time, we got to see them not have boneheaded penalties really derail drives, and them not have silly turnovers outside of Lamar's fumble on that scramble. And when you get those things and you have the run game and you're not making mistakes, you get to see what this team is supposed to be. And that's a team that can really kind of change gears on you, pound you on offense, and be able to take away explosive plays defensively.
I thought we agreed the Raiders game didn't happen. We don't have to exclude the third and fourth quarter. It didn't happen. Okay. Let's just agree.
NFL
game for the rest of the year. But I know we're going to spend this time lavishing praise on the Ravens, which we should do. I just want to talk about that Josh Allen throw when he was on the sideline to Shakir.
Oh my gosh.
I just ridiculous.
How?
He's a ridiculous player. I don't care if they lost this game. This game has done nothing to derail my take that he's been the best quarterback in the NFL so far this season. He just ran into a great defense and a great defensive performance in a game script, like Diante said, that really works against you as a quarterback and works in the favor of a defense like Baltimore.
Yeah, I don't have big concerns about the Buffalo Bills after this game. I think the Ravens played pretty much, except for, like Diante mentioned, that Lamar Jackson fumble. They played near their A+ game. You ran into him on that night. And we'll see if it's 2 or 3 weeks and we're saying, hey, he's holding the ball and wait, he's going back to having to be Superman and maybe the supporting cast isn't as good, then I'll have that conversation. I'm not going to have it after one game. I mean, their longest run tonight was 8 yards. They've been running the football really well. Some things didn't go their way. And Derrick Henry, not fun. 24 times Derrick Henry. And it wasn't just Derrick Henry. I mean, they were blocking their butts off. We've talked about their offensive line before, and they were just Patrick Ricard, Mark Andrews, even on that first long run. They were taking guys out on the Bills. So I think these are going to be two teams that are there towards the end of the season.
That Bills defense was making a lot of business decisions with number 22 running in the open field. And I can't blame them.
It's a long season. Yeah.
He's kind of been like a bully for this Buffalo team throughout his career over the last couple of years. He's had a big, I remember that stiff arm, I think, on Josh Norman, where he basically bounced him off the ground like a basketball. Yeah. And I think the Ravens might have seen those performances, and that might have inspired them to bring him in, because they've had issues, as we covered on the Friday show. They've had issues against this defense and running the football against this defense. Did not look like it on Sunday night.
Yeah, Derrick Henry's had so many moments for someone who hasn't been in the Super Bowl. He's had a lot of moments against these top tier AFC teams over the years. I mean, he went to Baltimore and threw a jump pass and upset maybe the best version we've seen of that Ravens team. All right, we'll take a break. We come back, get to some other big takeaways from week 4. All right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. Ruiz, Sam Darnold, and the Vikings go to Green Bay. Jordan Love plays, and the Vikings just jump all over them and win that game 31-29. What did you see?
What a strange game. This score is both misleading and not misleading. The Vikings blew this game out, and it wasn't super competitive. I know the Packers stormed back and almost got back into it, but it never felt like the Vikings were going to lose this game. But if you go back to the first quarter, this game really swung on 2 dropped passes. There was a drop on 3rd down. It was kind of a bad throw by Jordan Levin. There was a drop of a Sam Darnold pick that preceded the opening drive touchdown. If you reverse the results of those plays, I don't know, maybe it goes in Green Bay's favor. Maybe they're the team that get out ahead 28-0 and the Vikings have to come back. But I think my main takeaway is that out of all of the people involved in the Vikings this year that could be picked as their MVP, whether it's a coach or a player, it could be Kevin O'Connell, it could be Brian Flores, it could be Sam Darnold. Justin Jefferson's still the heart and soul of this team. He's still the best player on the team. He's still what this offense is built out of. And we saw how the gravity affected Green Bay's defense early on, where they were throwing a bunch of double teams on obvious passing situations. And that was opening things up for Addison elsewhere on the field. And that's how the Vikings scored their first 2 points, or first 2 touchdowns. They had huge plays where Jefferson's getting doubled or getting extra attention and another receiver makes a play. And then you saw the Packers adjust in the second half and they started taking away those extra bodies. And that's when Jefferson came up with 2 remarkable catches. His touchdown catch is one of the greatest displays of concentration I've ever seen. Like, the ball ricochets off his shoulder pad, off the Packers shoulder pad, the Packers defender's shoulder pad, and then he catches it with his right hand. With one hand, he pins it against his chest. And this all happens in maybe 0.5 seconds. These 4 ricochets, like a double doink off of the pads of the players, and it's an amazing catch. And then he seals the game with the catch. I think it was on 3rd and 11, where I don't know how he got those 2 feet down, but you saw both ends of his skill set. Like, you saw the physical contested catch, and then you saw the acrobatic sprawling catch. And then throughout the game, you just see him, doing everything else he does well. He's a great route runner. He can make those 50-50 catches. He can make those acrobatic catches. He could beat double teams. He could beat single teams. He's good against man. He's good against zone. He's like the ultimate weapon and the ultimate receiver. And I think if you take him off this team, the story totally changes with this offense.
And as we've talked about before, you never want the coach or the offensive coordinator where it's like, why isn't a player like that getting the ball, and you never really have to worry about that with the Vikings. So their coaching staff, I mean, obviously it's Jefferson's talent, but their coaching staff deserves credit too. He had 6 for 85 and a touchdown on 8 targets in this game. And like you said, they were doing things to take him away, but you can't make it easy for the opponent to just take a guy like that away. So Diante, the Vikings jumped out in this game 28-0 with about 6 minutes left in the second quarter. The Packers come storming back. Packers had 465 yards of offense, but had 4 turnovers. What else did you see in this game? What stood out to you?
I mean, to me, a lot of this comes back to game script. Again, I think that really this was, and we talked about this in the Friday show, this was always going to be a rough opportunity for Jordan Love to have to walk back into, a starting opportunity in the league, is seeing Brian Flores. And then I think you saw early in the game, they landed in a lot of 2nd and 11, 2nd and 12s, 3rd and 15s, 3rd and 20s. And I mean, you're just not going to succeed against Brian Flores under those circumstances. And then when you have those poor bounces of the ball, a throw behind a receiver in the second quarter, to your point, talking about when the game got away, turns into a big interception. And that just about felt like it sealed the game. And that's not the only one of its kind. But ultimately, and this comes back to what Steven was saying, I mean, my biggest takeaway echoes his sentiments, for all the talk about too high defenses and, wide receivers being a premium position and et cetera, about the passing game. It's so rare to come across guys that have legitimate gravity on the perimeter. Mm-hmm. And when I was watching Justin Jefferson, that's one of the few guys that's like got Steph Curry level gravity, because Jordan Addison is able to step right back into a starting role, and you get him targeted opportunities in the red zone. You're able to find him deep downfield, and all of that is only possible because of what Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson are able to do within this offense. Outside of that, I mean, the second half got really weird on the Packers end. They were able to kind of pop some of the explosive plays that they couldn't get at all in the first half. But, to Steven's point, I think that the final is probably misleading if we're talking about the flow of the game. By the time the Packers got it together, Minnesota was clearly one good possession away at all times from putting the game away.
I will say this about Jordan Love. I know he threw 3 picks. It was very Favre-esque. But that's how your quarterback should play when you're down 28-0. You should be willing to put the ball in harm's way. You should be making those YOLO throws. Like, the only reason they were able to get back in it was because Jordan Love was so reckless with his decision-making when throwing downfield. Like, it's honestly commendable. And like, there are other things that could have swung this game. Their kicker misses 2 field goals.
Yeah.
And they're not like super long field goals either. It's like 39 yards and 47 yards. They could have easily made those. That totally changes this game. So, I mean, I'm not too depressed if I'm a Packers fan after this one. I know the start was bad, but I thought Jordan Love came into his own as the game went on. And I think the other positive thing to take away from this is that knee injury, even though it was clearly bothering Love, it didn't prevent him from being a downfield explosive passer like we've seen with other quarterbacks. Like in Cincinnati, we've seen Joe Burrow really take a hit when he's taken a lower body injury. We've seen it affect the Chargers passing game with Justin Herbert nursing the high ankle sprain. But with Jordan Love, like, it still seems like deep passes are still on the menu in Green Bay. I would have loved to see Malik Willis in this game go up against Brian Flores, but I think it would have been ugly, especially if they fell behind early.
All right. This feels like a good spot for what is real check here, okay? Because the Minnesota Vikings are 4-0. They have beaten in 3 straight weeks the San Francisco 49ers, the Houston Texans, and the Green Bay Packers. 3 teams that could all potentially be playoff teams. Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores, incredible coaching job. The Packers are 2-2, but to your point, Jordan Love came back, maybe wasn't 100%, but threw for 389 yards and 4 touchdowns against Brian Flores. That's not nothing. I know, like you said, he had to just take chances, but it was only sacked once. That's an encouraging sign. They survived without him. They're still in the mix. So Ruiz, look into the crystal ball. Like, do you believe that the Vikings are close to this team? Like, is this a team that is going to win the NFC North? Potentially, I guess, compete for the 1 seed in the NFC? We got to say that they're 4-0. Or do you believe more in the Packers as that type of team to win the division?
Yeah, it's hard to answer just because they have this big margin of error to work with. And I want to believe in this Vikings team. Like, I love Kevin O'Connell. I love Justin Jefferson. I like this run game. I love Brian Flores. He's my favorite defensive coordinator in the NFL. But the quarterback is still the quarterback. And Sam Darnold showed once again, he's still got that bozo in him. And he nearly threw away the game in this one. And they had a 28-point lead.
What did he do in this one?
He threw a pick and he fumbled in the fourth quarter to let the Vikings get back. And he almost threw an interception, as I mentioned, on the first drive that would have taken points off the board again. Like, I think when he gets into one of these moments, he's going to show who he's been and who he will be going forward in his career. I'm not totally buying the turnaround.
You're leading Packers. I can tell by the tone. Yeah. Okay. So
I'm leading Packers because I think they have the coaching staff to match Minnesota's coaching staff. Not necessarily on the defensive side. I would take Brian Flores over Halfley every day of the week. But Matt LaFleur is probably better than Kevin O'Connell at this point. It's arguably close. The difference is one team has Jordan Love and the other one has Sam Darnold. So I'm going to go with Jordan Love, the more talented quarterback and the more trustworthy quarterback, which is odd to say about a guy who I just compared to Brett Favre, who just threw 3 touchdowns.
All right, Diante, I've been like, all right, this is going to be the week. Sam Darnold goes 20 for 28. Yes, he had a couple turnovers, but he was making some nice throws in this game at 275 yards, 3 touchdowns. I haven't gotten fully on board. I've been Mr. Packer since the preseason, and so I'm not going to jump now, although I'm just very impressed with what the Vikings have done so far. Where are you with these 2 teams?
I would say they're legitimately good, just not 4-0 good. And to Steven's point, they've bought themselves a nice amount of margin for error when Sam Darnold does turn back into the Sam Darnold we've known him to be over the last half decade plus as a starting quarterback. But when you look at some of the things that will maybe not be so stable, right? And I think a lot of that for Minnesota is on the defensive side of the ball. For, as many turnovers as they've forced, I think that they're only second to Green Bay in interception rate so far this year. I think they're top 10 in sack rate. So these are things that you would say like, hey, on a week by week basis, variance will probably tell you this will even out. You might not be as successful, even given the fact that they blitz a bunch. But you think about the fact that they're winning and still giving up explosive plays. right? So if they found a way to be successful despite giving up, 20 plus yard completions at about an 8% rate, which is top 10 allowed in the league or bottom 10 allowed in the league, and they've still looked good defensively, to me, that tells me that this is just more kind of locked into who they are identity wise and less about them just kind of riding the lightning on a week by week basis, right? I think that if turnover luck kind of goes the opposite way on the offensive end, you'll see things maybe kind of even back out. But for the most part, what they're doing and how they've been successful feels sustainable to me. The run game feels sustainable to me. Getting the ball to Justin Jefferson on early downs has been sustainable for them for as long as he's been a Viking. And I don't plan on that. I don't imagine that changing. And I'm sure that they don't plan on it changing. And having Jordan Addison back healthy, I think kind of evens out the roles with this wide receiver room, getting Jalen Naylor more as a wide receiver 3 and not having to rely on him when when Jefferson is being double teamed. So while I don't think they're contenders because of who's starting at quarterback for them, I think it would also be foolish to ignore what they've accomplished over the last 2 to 3 weeks and say that they're not a good team. I would say that they are good, just maybe not really 4-0 good the way that we would conceive of an undefeated team at this stage in the year.
Yeah, I think the one thing you have to buy is not only the infrastructure of the offense and the coaching staff, it's how good this defense is. That's the one thing I'm not really going to question, because especially in a playoff environment where it's like heavily game planned, we are attacking the specific things you do. We're not trying to establish a program and a way of playing defense throughout a 17-week season. We are focusing on what you do. I trust Brian Flores to at least give the offense a chance, even if Sam Darnold has a meltdown game in the playoffs. I think they'll have a chance in every game they play in the playoffs. I do think their demise will be authored by the quarterback, though.
Oh my gosh. I just picture the Vikings fans listen to us. 4-0.
Hey.
We got the most impressive resume in the NFC.
Vikings fans know better than anybody how this ends.
Sam Darnold, 4-0 in London, going to face off against his former team, the New York Jets, in week 5. What a story from the early season. All right, we'll take a break, come back, get to one more big takeaway. All right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. We got a coach on the hot seat, it sounds like, based on the post-game presser. We got maybe an offense that found its way. I'm not sure. Diante, Texans come back, beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 24-20. What did you see in this game? What's your big takeaway?
Here's how I would frame it. I think that despite Jacksonville really being within reach and having the lead for a lot of this game, it never really felt like they were in control of it. And I think that ultimately comes down to the difference in a quarterback that's talented and is in the right system versus one that is being failed by everything around him and building bad habits as a result of that. And it was just painted so clearly to me in the second half with all the opportunities that Jacksonville had to put this game away and them allowing Houston to just hang around, take the lead, go back and forth, and then ultimately outlast them to end the game. And I think that you can look at the data and it would support what I'm saying here. CJ Stroud was top 10 in EPA and in success rate as a passer today. Trevor Lawrence, 14th and 19th. And I would say this was probably one of the better games that he's had this year. This is probably the most complete game that Jacksonville has played this year. But you look at some of the underlying statistics, especially how they perform, how these two quarterbacks performed under pressure. And you can kind of see one guy who's building the right habits and one that has built a lot of scar tissue over the years. This was Trevor Lawrence's 5th worst performance by EPA when he was pressured today. And he didn't throw any interceptions. So that's to say that there's not a lot of high variance stuff that's working against him. This is just him missing throws, taking sacks in can't take sack situations, being bad on third down again, not connecting with open receivers deep downfield. And then you look at Stroud on the other end, and it's like a masterclass in sack avoidance, a masterclass in getting the ball to guys when it needs to be there, being accurate at all 3 levels of the field, in and out of the pocket. And I'm just watching these diverging paths with 2 guys that I thought would be battling back and forth for this division. And I think you get to see exactly why, despite Houston's struggles this year, why they still look good and are in the AFC hunt, and Jacksonville looking like their season is over and their head coach is probably going to have to update the LinkedIn by the end of the year.
Maybe not the LinkedIn, maybe just the who wants to go on a golf trip? I would think, just from having covered Doug Peterson. I think after this thing ends, I don't know that he's going to need to update the resume and want to do this again. I think he might be good, working on the short game a little bit. Golfing, listen, that's a good life. I wouldn't mind that life.
It looks like his mind's already on the 18th green right now.
It may
watching
be.
them.
I was going to say, if you watch the second half, it looked like a team coached by a guy that is thinking nothing more about the 16th hole that he blew last week.
And he was also thinking about throwing his players under the bus after this one, which I kind of agree with him on the.
How so?
Game.
What was the kind of context of it?
He says that the play caller, he was referencing Press Taylor, who's been a maligned offensive coordinator for the last couple of years. He said, well, we can't go out there and make the plays for the players. So he threw the players under the bus. I kind of agree with him on this one. They're like Diante alluded to, Trevor Lawrence missed a couple of big opportunities on downfield throws. If those throws happen, who knows how this game looks. They got down to the red zone. They were running the ball well. They just couldn't finish off drives. And I think a lot of the players had issues executing in those situations. I don't think the play call was necessarily the root of the problem. But that doesn't explain the first 3 weeks of the season when the play calls weren't so good. And these players not developing, especially Trevor Lawrence, reflects poorly on the coaching staff. So, I mean, I guess it's a valid criticism, but it's also a criticism on himself.
Yeah, that's why Doug Peterson was brought there to, coach the quarterback, have the quarterback develop. If nothing else happened and just he was not even top 5, but just keep improving year over year, I think that would have been considered some type of victory where then you could say, all right, do we need to replace Peterson still with someone who can get us over the top? And Trevor Lawrence, I mean, it's wild, and I believe Diante when he said this was might have been one of his better performances of the season. And then I look at the box score and it's 18 for 33 for 169 yards. I mean, on the season, he's completing 53% of his passes and averaging 6 yards per attempt. That's not quite Bryce Young territory, but you don't have to scroll up. You don't have to scroll down to get to Bryce Young. It's going to be, even if you got a real small monitor there, even if you're on your phone, that name's going to be next to it. So this couldn't have gone any worse, Diante, the way this season has gone.
I mean, Sheil, and I'm guilty of this. I know Steven's probably been guilty of this too. We have a lot of colleagues that can be guilty of this. I don't want to couch this with Trevor Lawrence anymore. We watched one of his draft peers, Zach Wilson, get absolutely set on fire for performances like this today. I'm saying this is one of his better performances, and it's not really a compliment. You can't miss these double moves deep down the field when you have a middle of the field safety beat. You can't have these sailed passes outside the numbers. At a certain point, man, enough has to be enough. I like the guy. He's talented. I think everybody here was all part of the consensus that believed that he was going to be not only the number 1 overall pick, but a guy that could take a franchise like Jacksonville and help turn it around. And to this point, no matter where I would like to diagnose the blame, we're not seeing a guy who is making any progress within this offense. And we're now multiple years now of working with Doug Peterson. And in a lot of ways, I would say he's regressing. His response to pressure looks like a guy who doesn't believe that he has the answers anymore. We're not seeing him scramble as effectively as we did last year when he was healthy. I actually thought that was one of the better parts of his game last year, was being able to take off, and 2 years ago as well. And when the accuracy starts dipping the way that it is, it almost feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, where things have gone bad. So now he has to press, he presses, and things don't get better. And now you're just kind of down this rabbit hole of the bad turning worse and the worst turning into, unviable situations. So I do think that Doug Peterson and Press Taylor have a lot of criticism that's rightfully so thrown in their direction. But for all of us who have been Trevor Lawrence believers over the years, I do think it's time for us to maybe confront the fact that we're dealing with a very talented quarterback, and wherever the scar tissue came from, at the end of the day, it's on him to be able to dig his way through it. And we just have not seen it. And if anything, I would say it's getting worse right now.
But the one thing I would push back against is the misses we're starting to see over the last 2 weeks. We didn't see pre-injury last year, and we didn't really see the year before that. This is a new development. There was no way to calibrate for Trevor Lawrence for getting how to complete a pass downfield coming into this season. Yeah. And I'm inclined to believe that there's been a lack of development there, and it's a coaching issue. We've seen him make these throws before. Accuracy wasn't an issue at Clemson. So I don't know. I'm inclined to believe that if you bring in a new coach, a good coaching staff, that this is easily fixable, and that the Jaguars aren't going to be stuck with a bad contract for the next 4 or 5 years or however long his contract lasts. I don't know. I would be optimistic still as a Jaguars fan because I have the quarterback in place. It's so obvious to see that this coaching staff is just not up to this job. And it's been 7 years since Doug Peterson has led a team to more than 10 wins in a season. It's been a long time since 2017. And it doesn't start with Trevor. I feel like Trevor is way at the bottom of the list of concerns with this team right now.
I wouldn't say way at the bottom. I think it's a failure all around. I agree with you. I mean, you can look at personnel as well. Usually, if a quarterback is at a certain level, the floor would 53% completions and 6 yards per attempt. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure I know there are examples. I'm sure we can think of examples, but kind of how low it's gotten this year. And think of the issues you guys are describing: issues under pressure, accuracy, decision making. Like there's a lot there, and we all see it. We all know that there's talent somewhere in there, but he has been in the NFL for 4 years. I know we don't like quarterback wins, but this is wild. They have not won a game that Trevor Lawrence has started. They've lost 9 straight games that Trevor Lawrence has started. Last time they won a game that he started was November 26th, 2023. So yes, I mean, Peterson was asked after the game about his job security, and I don't think he liked the question, but 0-4 is 0-4. I mean, we all know where this is going, and Shad Khan might already have his next coach picked out. As Ruiz told us before, maybe it's just Bill Belichick might already have a little house or a little condo picked out right next to the facility where he can go and get a head start. But yeah, they are having a nightmare season, and that continues. All right, we'll take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to plant some flags after 4 weeks of the 2024 season. All right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. All right, so here's the exercise. Very simple. Plant your flag on something based on what you saw today, based on what you've seen over the first 4 weeks of the season. It can be game specific, team specific, whatever. We don't really have rules for this. We kind of just thought about it right before we recorded the show, but it's going to be fun. Ruiz, start us off. What are you planting your flag on?
I'm planting my flag on the Chiefs not having a top 10 offense this season.
No, more Chiefs
for the second.
Slander.
Yeah, more Chiefs slander. I know they won. I know Travis Kelce had his breakout game. He had 85 yards or whatever it was on
89.
89. I don't want to short him any yards. God knows he needs every yard he can get this season. But we saw Rashee Rice go out with an injury. Ironically, it was Patrick Mahomes who accidentally collided with his knee that caused the injury. But now I'm totally concerned because I know we had this breakout from Kelce. But if Rashee Rice isn't playing, and apparently the fear is a torn ACL, according to Adam Schefter.
Yeah, the Athletic had that. Oh, okay, Adam Schefter too. Yep, yeah, fear is a torn ACL. It didn't look good. I mean, it was a weird, like you said, it's a weird play, interception, and as soon as it happened, even the announcers and his teammates, it seemed like, this might not be good.
No, but he had effectively replaced Kelce as that reliable target over the middle when Kelce was looked slowed down over the first couple of weeks, and then at the end of last year and into the playoffs. And now that they don't have that, I don't know where they go with this receiving core. Isaiah Pacheco is out seemingly indefinitely. Hollywood Brown has an injury that's going to be long-term. Xavier Worthy made a big touchdown catch today, a 54-yarder. And he made a big third down catch later in the game. But it's just splash plays with him for right now. We don't see him as that route runner who's going to be physical over the middle. He's a very small receiver. If anything, it's going to be very hard. It's going to be harder for him now that Rashee Rice is out of the picture. So I don't know where the passing game goes from here. And they're running their offense through this Carson Steele guy on early downs. How is that going to last? I don't know. Like at a certain point, you need talent. And we've talked about Andy Reid. I'm still not seeing him call plays that unlock easy buttons for Mahomes in this offense. I'm not seeing a guy flashing wide open over the middle. Even the passes to Kelce took some touch. He had to layer it over the second level of the defense. The Worthy touchdown was a go ball for all intents and purposes. He had to make a perfect throw 60 yards downfield. It's nothing easy right now. And the only receiver that got targets in this game outside of Worthy was Justin Watson. So, like, you can't run an offense with Justin Watson being your second viable receiver on the roster. We didn't see a target for Juju Smith-Schuster. Sky Moore didn't get a target. None of those wide receivers, those ancillary guys, have stepped up this year. And with Rice out, where does the passing game go from here? We were worrying about it last week. Now it's even worse.
this is last year all over again. I mean, and they won the Super Bowl. They still won the Super Bowl last year. But I just remember at the end of that thinking they're not going to do this again. And, part of it is bad luck. Like Rashee Rice, I mean, he was playing really well. If Kelsey's coming on and Worthy's developing, you could talk yourself into, hey, this is going to look a lot different by Thanksgiving. But if Rice is out, I mean, you look at the box score, it's Travis Kelce, it's Xavier Worthy, it's Noah Gray, it's Justin Watson. These are the guys getting traffic. I mean, getting targets. Again, it looks very similar to last year. And then their defense is lights out. The Chargers couldn't do a thing. They get 12 first downs in the entire game. I know the Chargers were banged up, but the Chiefs still have that to lean on with their defense. Diante, I think it's more with this group and the rest of the season, it's more on the personnel. If you're going to ding Reed for it, to me, it's more the players on the field. Like I don't know how many. It's not a great group to be able to scheme up a lot of stuff with, in my opinion. What do you think? Is there enough to work with here? Where hey, if you are a great offensive coach, you can make it work, or is it just like these are the guys you're left with? Figure it out. Like last year, it might not always look pretty.
Can I just add one piece of key information before Diante answers? He has Patrick Mahomes.
Yes. And he picks the players too.
Yeah, but he also has Patrick Mahomes. Through all things, through Patrick Mahomes, all things are possible. Don't give me the wide receiver personnel is bad. And Rashee Rice just got injured this week. This has been a problem going on 3 years now.
I'm with you, dude. Honestly, I love the fact that you said it's about having Patrick Mahomes, because if this was basketball and you had LeBron James and you were running the Princeton offense, I would call you a bozo for it. I don't care about the back cuts. I don't care about your beautiful RPOs and your bubble screens. I don't care about the slide routes. I don't care about the check downs and all these yak opportunities, because this is something that's existed for the last 2 years. They are once again one of the better teams in terms of yards after catch. I obviously expect that to change with Rashee Rice's injury, because he has been their yak guy over the last 2 years. But now without him, what are you going to do to make this offense viable? Because the one thing that Rashee Rice gave them was enough cover to protect Travis Kelce from having to take on a heavy workload in the regular season. You can't do that now. There is nobody that's going to take Rashee Rice's targets and at least make them as productive as it was for them. He was their ISO, maybe not an ISO receiver in the sense of lining up as an X, lining up as an isolated tight end the way that Travis Kelce did, and winning on these difficult routes crossing the middle of the field. But he was, choice routes, something on the move against linebackers, against safeties, because he could work from the slot. They don't have a guy that's a natural fit for that. Even if Xavier Worthy does continue to be an explosive play threat, to Steven's point, so much of it is going to be gadgety. It's going to be double moves. It's going to be flea flickers. It's going to be end arounds like we saw week 1. It's going to take much more work than it's worth on a week by week basis to try to get a guy like that open. And on the run game, from a run game perspective, the success rate is fine. And again, this existed last season, where all the people who were, supportive of the Chiefs were pointing to success rate, pointing to things that are more sustainable on a down-and-down basis. And there's nothing wrong with them on a down-and-down basis. This is just not just is it boring, I think it's a misuse of the quarterback that they have, and it's unimaginative. And I just want to see a little bit more imagination in the offense, and it feels weird having to ask that of Andy Reid, who is a guy that we know loves nothing more than getting on the whiteboard and drawing up the best ways to get guys open.
I should say the Chiefs are 4-0. So this is gonna look
4-0, fourth in success rate, like Diante said. But listen, this is the aisle we're shopping in. I don't know. Does that make sense? You know what I'm talking about. It's talking about the Chiefs. It's different than talking about other teams.
Exactly. The bar is higher with them. But this is going to look great in their pre-Super Bowl nobody believe in us montage.
Oh, so
you're welcome for that.
Be on a social media reel, 100%.
And I don't want to take anything from Kareem Hunt. I said that they were running the offense through Carson Steele. They're actually running it through Kareem Hunt like it's 2018 all over again, which isn't much better.
I mean, that when Mahomes just winds up and that bomb to Worthy, it just that almost, because you're just like, this is what could be, 54 yards. He just play action, gets back there, chucks it, lands right in Worthy's hands. So yeah, a little bit more of that. They're 4-0. They're going to win a lot of games because they're well-rounded special teams, defense, Mahomes. It is an interesting question. What style of offense do we see them?
Have you looked at their schedule to the point of it not mattering? Have you looked at their schedule? They see two good teams between now and Thanksgiving. They have the 49ers in a couple weeks, and they have the Bills the week before Thanksgiving week. This team is going to be 10-2 9-1 by the time we get there. And I'm probably still going to be complaining, and they're going to be running away with the 1 seed in the AFC.
That's right. Super Bowl favorites, but that won't stop us. All right, we'll take a break, come back to a couple things that Diante and I are planting our flags on. All right, we are back on the Ringer NFL show. Diante, what do you got?
All right, I'm planting my flag on on my take that the Bears are primed for a big surge and that Caleb Williams is going to overtake the Rookie of the Year race when he faces off with the Commanders on October 27th.
Wow. What did Caleb Williams do today?
I would say it's all about the second half. So he had the best second half by all quarterbacks if you look at success rate and EPA per dropback. This is something I was texting with Steven about as the game was going on earlier today. Just saying, like, you could just feel the momentum in every decision he was making. It wasn't about explosive offense. It was about doing the boring stuff much better than he had in the first 3 weeks of the year. It was about not taking silly sacks, not putting the ball in harm's way. And when you take that out of his game, and this was something that was really not in the scouting report, this was not something that was a concern, what we had seen over the last 2 weeks with the crazy turnovers, at least in terms of interceptions. Right, we're not seeing strip sacks. We were seeing him put the ball in harm's way down the field, which is not a part of his game. And now that that's been eliminated, you get a viable passing offense. And when you have that in addition to what they've been defensively, which has quietly been like one of the best at, performing in high leverage, high variance situations, top 5 on third down. If you look at EPA and success rate, I believe top 10 in the red zone. And when you put those things together and you're able to keep teams from putting together explosive plays, from finishing drives with touchdowns, they're able to get pressure out of their defensive interior and some of their secondary pass rushers in ways that I was really concerned about coming into the year. They have a really good combination of the pieces that they need to be successful on a week-by-week basis. All they really needed was for their rookie quarterback to not actively be in the way of success. And now that he's starting to clean up some of his play, we're starting to see more of the team that I think we were excited to talk about coming into the season.
So your confidence level in the Shane Waldron of it all, shall we say?
I did not mention that man.
I noticed you didn't mention him. That's why I'm bringing him up. I noticed you didn't mention Shane Waldron. You didn't mention the offensive line. Like I know Caleb Williams, third highest success rate of any quarterback this week. So the box score is not going to wow you, 17 for 23 for 157, but the success rate, that kind of speaks to exactly what you were saying. These weren't just, check downs that aren't doing anything. They were moving the football and he was making good decisions, even if they weren't the most exciting decisions. However, is what they did sustainable with that OC and with that offensive line and everything else around Caleb Williams the rest of the way?
I don't know if they'll run the ball as well week by week the way that they did in the second half. I think that might be a little specific to the Rams and some of their struggles in their front seven. But it was nice to see that they could do what's obvious, knowing that they want to play with wider edges, knowing that they want to play with lighter boxes and give you a lot of soft zones and try to bring safeties into the run fit as the snap is happening. You've got to attack that with downhill runs. And we finally got to see DeAndre Swift get out on the perimeter and find some yardage. We were able to see him get downhill at times and get some explosive plays. They were able to run in short yardage situations in a way that they hadn't earlier in the year as well. So I do think that maybe that won't be as good, but to the point that I'm making, any and all gains in that department makes it better for Caleb Williams. And you see the defense has played well, and now that Caleb Williams isn't in his own way, I don't think that this is a team that's going to be at the top of the NFC North by Thanksgiving. But I do think that they will clearly be in the wild card race and one of the better teams in the NFC. And like I said, when they see the Commanders on October 27th, I think that we'll probably be seeing Caleb Williams at the best that we have up to this point in the year.
I think the key number from this game isn't just that success rate, 57.7. It's that in conjuncture with the pressure rate. He was under pressure 42% of the time today and mitigated that pressure so well. Didn't make mistakes, didn't put the ball in harm's way, and found completions repeatedly. I think we've seen him get better and better each and every week. He's gotten better from quarter to quarter, from half to half. Like, I would be so ecstatic if I was a Bears fans right now, because this is what it looks like. There's nothing fake about his performance today. Like, he's doing quarterback things in the pocket, not in easy situations, not in wide open pockets where they schemed it up so there's a wide open guy running downfield. He's had some of those opportunities and missed them, especially on these out and ups. He missed a couple of more out and ups today. I don't know, maybe just stop calling those plays Shane Waldron, never call an out and up again. But otherwise, like he looks the part of a franchise quarterback in the pocket.
All right. Well, I'm glad that Caleb Williams is making some progress. I like Caleb Williams. I think the Bears are going to be in the mix for a playoff berth, but he's not winning offense. The offensive rookie of the year is pretty much over with the way Jaden Daniels is playing. Because not only is Jaden Daniels going to win that, but the Commanders are winning the NFC East. That's what I'm planting my flag on. This team, just 6 days after winning Monday Night Football, goes to Arizona and stomps the Arizona Cardinals 42-14. They are 3-1. The Cowboys, we all watched them on Thursday night. That wasn't the most impressive performance I've ever seen. The Eagles, did anyone watch the Eagles today? Do you know that Vic Fangio's defense
I wish I hadn't.
Worse than the Matt Patricia defense last year based on EPA per drive? Did you know that? Because it was ugly. 12 for 13. Baker Mayfield starts the game today, and that's over. And then I'm looking at this guy, Jaden Daniels, 26 for 30, 233 yards. They had 9 possessions. They scored on 7 of them. Last 3 games, they've had 22 offensive possessions, and they found points on 20 of them. 1 punt and 1 interception in a 3-game stretch. The guy is playing fantastic. He's making good decisions. He's accurate within like the short and intermediate game. He's not missing throws. He missed 1 throw. It was an interception, and it really stood out because he hasn't missed those all season long. Then he's making high-level throws in this game. He's using his legs when he needs to. I don't think he took massive hits today, which is obviously the concern, along with the Cliff Kingsbury post-Halloween slide. I know that's on my radar too. But I don't know. I believe my eyes, what I'm seeing. I know they're not going to be this good, this offense, but Jaden Daniels, for a rookie to be doing this, completing 82% of his passes, averaging 8.5 yards per attempt. By the way, look at their box score. Everybody complaining about who your quarterback's throwing to. Yeah, they got Terry McLaurin. Then it's Olamide Zaccheaus, Noah Brown, Zach Ertz, and Luke McCaffrey. That's who he's throwing the football to. All right, so Ruiz, you let out an audible gasp, or I don't know how I would describe that when I came away with my take. Or is that because you're not buying this? Is that because you have family who are Washington fans and you don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt? What's going on here?
It's a little bit of everything. A little bit of column A, a little column B. And what I said was, oh, brother. Because can we watch them play a real team? I'm sorry, Joe Burrow's Bengals don't count as a real team at this point. They were struggling to put away the Panthers.
Oh, today. What? The Los Angeles Rams have the 85 Bears defense all of a sudden? You judge it by who they're playing. They're killing these teams. 42 points.
They're killing these teams. This was their first.
I thought the Cardinals were the hipster team, and all the hipsters were telling me, oh, my God, the Cardinals, what they do defensively, they are reinventing football. 3 safeties. Oh, my. The performance isn't going to be there, but, oh, my God, this scheme is incredible. And Drew Petzig, the greatest bald coordinator.
That was you.
They couldn't keep up with them. All right, that part was me.
They're not blowing out these teams, first of all.
Today they did.
Yeah, today they did. They beat the Bengals by 5 points. They beat Daniel Jones's Giants by 3 points 2 weeks ago. It was only 2 weeks ago. But they played the Ravens.
Second NFL start. He's getting better every week.
I do agree. This was his best game.
Yeah.
I kind of questioned his performance against the Bengals and said it was based on 2 good go balls. No, he shut me up this week. This was a comprehensive performance for not only him, but Cliff Kingsbury. Jesus. Talk about reaching deep into your bag. I mean, the run game was just beautifully called. The passing game was so easy for Daniels, and that's not to take anything away from his performance because he helped set that up with his legs. This was a great offensive performance, but I've seen this movie before. I've seen Cliff Kingsbury. I'm sorry. I'm familiar with your game. I know how this ends. There's an expiration date, and it's coming in the next 2 weeks. They play the Browns defense next week, and they go to Baltimore the week after that. Let's check it in 2 weeks, how optimistic you are about these predictions.
That's a bad job by me. You got to time the take better. I hadn't looked at their schedule. Probably should have waited. Maybe I should have waited. That's okay. Listen, they can look bad in those 2 games. That's okay. These four good games and 2 bad games against great defenses. Yeah, then I'll go back to the Olamide Zaccheaus thing. I already got my excuses ready.
But guess what? After that week, they played the playoff-bound Carolina Panthers. Your Carolina Panthers.
Back on track. 5-2. I don't know. I'm looking at these NFC East teams, Diante, and None of them are that impressive. And the Commanders are easily the most fun watch and have been the best offense through the first 4 weeks of the season. I think that's undeniable.
I mean, he's clearly the second best quarterback in the NFC East through the first 4 weeks of the season, to me, behind Dak Prescott. Right?
That was second best.
This is where you gotta separate yourself from the EPA numbers. Dak Prescott, I would say, has been a little bit better.
Oh my gosh!
But
here's what I will say. Takes. Jaden Daniels over Dak Prescott is a hipster take.
Through the first 4 weeks of the season, who's played better? What are we talking about? Don't make me feel like I'm the weird person. The team doesn't punt, and I'm the weird person for saying he's been better. Give me a break.
Give it
for a month. I've been trying to figure out how I can instigate an incident between the two of you. I'm so glad that this is Jaden Daniels that's doing this.
I know somehow I've become the Jaden Daniels.
Started on the mini pod, to be honest.
That's okay.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing to me that has been just most stark. It's been his response to pressure the last 2 weeks. That's been something that I couldn't have anticipated. I don't know if it's going to last. I don't know how sticky that is. I think that they've been able to find a lot of explosive plays, and he's been able to scramble. The scrambling piece of it is probably never going to leave from his game. I would say the pocket management part of it, seeing him flip the ball to a running back as the pocket's closing in, that tells me that, okay, like he's in a good rhythm. And I think that that's maybe the biggest thing that we've seen over the last 2 weeks is that he's clearly catching a rhythm within this offense. We will see, to Steven's point, what it looks like as we get deeper into the season, get to about the midseason mark. You know, Cliff Kingsbury does run, I would say, a simplified passing game. But one of the reasons why they've been able to protect Jaden Daniels in a lot of ways on early downs is because this run game has been much better than I think anybody could have expected, given the offensive line and given their running back rotation. And this is something that Cliff Kingsbury does deserve a lot of credit for. This goes back to his time in Arizona. He's always done a really good job at involving his tight ends to create multiple looks, using the threat of the quarterback in the run game to even out the numbers and use a lot of misdirection to get to the edge, to be able to get downhill. Even though they're not always motioning a ton, they're not giving you a lot of things that you haven't seen before. It is just the usage of their personnel and how willing they are to get into heavy sets to be able to move guys close to the line of scrimmage and within the core of the formation. That part should keep up. I do think you're going to see more of what you saw with that interception today, of him just throwing the ball in the middle of the field in a way that he just does not need to, doesn't have much reason to, or accuracy may be a little bit off, and that might bring him back down to earth. But I will give you credit on this take, Sheil. He has played so much better under duress than I ever would have imagined. I just need to see him replicate that over the next 2 to 3 weeks when he sees a little bit better quality defenses.
Just to be clear, what's the take? What did you plant your flag on?
The Commanders are winning the NFC East.
All right. 32nd ranked defense by EPA, by the way. I can't believe you had to hype up the Cardinals to get that point across, because we know damn well that you don't believe in the Cardinals.
Listen, the defense actually did play well today. I will say that.
It did.
The Commanders defense easily had their best game. This is planting your flag after 4 weeks. This is part of the fun of the exercise. Maybe Cliff went to Thailand, found something. How do you extend? Can have success for 2 months. I can never extend it. Somebody here, help me. Maybe he found someone. You don't know. You don't know what Cliff was up to last offseason. But, man, Commanders have been fun to watch here, and they were fun to watch again. All right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. I feel alive. You know, it's just been a while. Just been yelling at some, people on a mic at 1 a.m. by myself with the windows open, with people walking their dogs or whatever outside, being like, what is this man doing? So this is good. I feel energized. And now we're getting to the awards portion of the program, where we just hand out some awards, some superlatives, basically a way for us to just get off some more takes about what we saw today. Ruiz, why don't you start us off?
I'm going to start us off with the beginning of the end award, and it's going to the Jets and the relationship between Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if you saw after the game, but there was a little misunderstanding between the two. And I'm going to blame Jets media for kind of instigating a little bit. The Jets had 5 false starts in this game against the Broncos, and a 10-9 loss against the Broncos. An ugly loss to Bo Nix, who only threw for 60 yards, had negative 9 yards at halftime. The Jets found a way to lose this game. But he was asked about the pre-snap penalties, and Robert Saleh suggested, maybe we're not good enough to handle the pre-snap cadence stuff. Because obviously Aaron Rodgers uses that as a weapon. He's used it throughout his career. He's used it as a weapon this season. We saw it in week 1 on the Allen Lazard touchdown against the 49ers. And then Aaron Rodgers was asked about that comment. And Aaron Rodgers was like, well, yeah, that's one way to fix it. I guess he was alluding to not doing the cadence stuff anymore. But the other one is just to hold those players accountable, which I felt like was a dig at the coaching staff for apparently not holding these players accountable. But really, Saleh never suggested they should stop doing the cadence stuff. He was just like, it was kind of stream of consciousness. And he was like, oh, maybe it's that. And then he kind of caught himself and was like, well, we haven't really had any pre-snap procedural issues before this game, so I don't know. And Rodgers didn't get that context. So I think there's going to be an awkward conversation between Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers in the locker room after this little post-game press conference situation. But the vibes all around aren't great, even on the field. Like, this was one of the uglier games we've seen, not only during the Aaron Rodgers era, but during the Robert Saleh era, where we've seen a lot of bad quarterbacking. And I wouldn't put it all on Rodgers. They didn't have a great run game. They didn't have answers for the blitz. But the thing that stood out to me was Aaron Rodgers still can't move. And I think teams are going to watch that film, and they're going to see that the Broncos blitzed him 22 times, including 9 blitzes of 6 or more rushers. And they're going to decide, this guy can't elude this pressure. He can't make plays under this pressure. He averaged 1.9 yards per play against 6 or more rushers in this game.
Wow.
So that's not going to go away. I think it's a copycat league. They're going to see that a bunch, and I wonder how Rodgers deals with that. And if it looks ugly on the field, it's going to get ugly off the field too.
24 for 42, 225 yards, averages 5.4 yards per attempt, takes 5 sacks. I mean, it's so because the last time we saw Aaron Rodgers, I was basically like, Aaron Rodgers is back. Holy cow. He looks incredible against the Patriots, but the Broncos are just blitzing at this crazy rate that no other team in the NFL is blitzing at. And yeah, even that last play at the end there, they blitz and he takes a sack on 4th down there. So, all right. Some wires were crossed with the media. Well, listen, that's what the reporters, they take what Saleh said. Then you ask Rodgers about what Saleh said. He could ask for clarification if he wants to. Someone could give it to him. But not an encouraging game for the New York Jets, who lose 10. What a weird. This might be the weird box score of the week, huh? 10-9 Broncos. The Broncos had 12 first downs and 186 yards in this Bo Nix Diante. I didn't have eyes on this game, but Bo Nix was 12 for 25 for 60 yards, and the Broncos won this game. Was this in one of your quad boxes or no?
Sheil, I know I'm relatively new to the ringer here. It's only been a couple months, but I would like to believe that you know me a little bit better than that. I'm never watching a rainy mess of a game where Bo Nix is one of the starting quarterbacks. I will say I did kind of peek in and out of this, right? I did peek in and out of this game. I think he probably got about half of his passing production on one throw up the seam today. And like the first 2 quarters of the game were just like some of the worst quarterbacking you can definitely tell he struggles with inclement weather. Ball was flopping right out of his hands, couldn't finish his throws. It was wobbly, way outside of the frame of receivers. I do want to come back briefly to what Steven was talking about with that little kind of dust up or maybe misunderstanding between Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers. I think the best thing about that is that it pokes at a very specific insecurity of Aaron Rodgers, which is the insinuation that he's not competent and smart enough to do things his own way. Mm-hmm. I don't think you get that reaction out of Rodgers if you challenge his accuracy or, what he's doing in terms of like arm angles or leaving the pocket too early or anything like that. The idea that you would challenge him with how he likes to operate pre-snap, which has been a thing now for basically every offensive play caller that he's had going back to Mike McCarthy. That was just like I don't think it was intended that way from Robert Saleh, but it clearly pushed the exact right button for Aaron Rodgers to get him to react.
Now that's Rodgers' thing, like the pre-snap cadence. That's his thing, drawing teams off sides, the aggressive hard count. If he doesn't have that, then what does he have left? Nathaniel Hackett.
Not escaping pressure, I can tell you that much.
He definitely doesn't.
He looked awful against pressure today.
Yeah, I was going to say insulting his cadence. That's probably like insulting one of my children. I mean, that's all we've heard about Aaron Rodgers for a long
knocking a hat off the head.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Diante, what do you got? What's your award?
All right, this is a very contrived superlative here, but we're going to call this the guy that's bringing a wrecking ball to Mount Rushmore, and this is Fred Warner today, who, like, as I was watching him, Like, I just kept the interception, obviously, I think was a big flashpoint play. And we talked about his interception and forced fumble against Minnesota as well. But when you see him get a pick like that, if you understand what the offense is trying to do, that passing concept that he got an interception on is tailor made to eliminate the middle linebacker from being in the throwing window. They ran a dagger concept, which means you've got a deep crossing route. They had 2 deep crossing routes. So you're trying to pull the weak side safety out of the picture and the middle linebacker out of the picture. It's the exact kind of coverage that you want to run it against, because I think San Francisco is running cover 2 or Tampa 2 to it. So you've got as much stress on this coverage as possible. And you get the crosser coming across Fred's face, and he gives you the bait that he's taking it, and he clearly knows where you want to go. He knows the dig is coming, and you see him fall off on it. And then that's where you get to see him apply his rare length and athletic ability at this position to go snag that ball out the air, get up off the ground, and go get a pick six. And watching that play in particular just gave me shades of Luke Kuechly at his best, where you just knew he could not be fooled by anything an offense was doing. It didn't matter motions. It didn't matter if you put a receiver in the slot. That was a little uncharacteristic for your offense. It didn't matter if you ran play action. He just was able to diagnose everything. And I think that Fred Warner is in that type of space as a player. It's really a shame that we're seeing this from him while he's probably surrounded by the worst supporting cast defensively that he's had in his career there, at least as long as he's been the guy as middle linebacker. But he is clearly at the peak of his powers. And I think that by the time this contract is up for him, we're going to have some real conversations about where he lands in the hierarchy of linebackers all time.
I think all the soccer fans listening remember Gary Neville saying David Luiz plays like a middle schooler is controlling him with a video game controller in the stands. I would say the same thing about Fred Warner, but I mean it as a compliment. Like, he plays like someone is playing Madden and has like that 30,000 foot view and can control him and knows what routes are being run behind him. Like Diante said, you can't fool him. And he's been a master at robbing these routes for the last couple of years. These route concepts that are aimed to attack the linebackers in zone coverage. And he just never wavers against them. He always makes the right decision, seemingly. And this is his best season yet. Like, right now, I know it's very early, but I think he's the leader in Defensive Player of the Year. And if he's not, who's been a more impactful defensive player this year so far? I can't name one.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be guys with pass rush numbers. There's always going to be that, but the gap between him and everyone else, it just feels like, for us to be in sort of a forum where no one can agree on anything in the space of, and that's part of the fun of the NFL analysis. But I don't think, like, if you ran into someone and they were not like, Fred Warner's awesome, he's the best linebacker in the NFL, you would immediately just dismiss their credibility about everything else. Who else can you really say that about? I mean, Mahomes, Justin Jefferson, there might be like five people in the NFL you can say that about. So Niners dominate 30-13 over the Patriots. They are 2-2 on the season. And I guess Drake may watch maybe now begins a little bit for the Patriots. I haven't looked at I got their schedule here. They've got the Dolphins next week. Might not be the worst spot to put them in there. So we'll see what the Patriots end up doing. All right, I got to go back to back with my awards here because they're kind of linked. So my first one is, now I was stuck watching Eagles Bucks in the early window, and I'm like, all these close games, and I'm watching the Garbanzo Beans game. So I got a lot of Tom Brady today. That's a little hint. Most awkward news break I've ever heard, not just of the 2024 NFL season. Tom Brady, where he has some cards and he's like, yeah, I decided to bring these to work today. It's like, all right, this is weird. He's like, these were my 18 reasons for signing with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Like, I guess he was making some pros cons list and he had these pieces of paper and he brought them. But then he says, yeah, the Chicago Bears were really a serious suitor when I was a free agent. And I thought seriously, I was seriously considering signing with them. It's like something that I didn't know. I don't think anyone knew this. I actually think he was, for the first time, maybe, Woj leaves the space. He's thinking, this is my world now. I can go dominate. And he reveals that when he signed with the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Bears were an under the radar team that was trying to sign him. And he seriously considered them. So it was awkward. I don't know when it seemed like at some point they decided, hey, if it's a blowout, we can talk about this. But Ruiz, that's kind of an interesting what if, right?
Yeah, I was trying to think back to like 2019, the last year before he left for Tampa Bay, and what the situation was with the Bears. They did go 8-8, which was better than the Bucs, who went 7-9 that year before Brady went. And they lost two games in week 15 and week 16. So they might have made the playoffs if they got better quarterback play out of, I'm guessing Mitch Trubisky was the quarterback back then, maybe Andy Dalton. I don't know. So maybe it does make sense, but I don't know how that would have looked in Chicago. A 45-year-old quarterback throwing in that wind. I don't know.
I think this was probably a matter of, I think this was maybe a matter of Chicago was going to give me all the particulars on the contract that I was asking for when I started shopping myself. And then when I ultimately looked at the pros and cons list, I pulled up the wide receiver depth chart in Tampa Bay and I compared it to the wide receiver depth chart in Chicago. And it probably wasn't much of a debate anymore.
Yeah, it is funny because when he was going through the pros and cons, he's like, of course, salary. So, yeah, he didn't hide it. It was like right away. Yeah, so maybe that's how the Bears got in there. All right, so that's the first award. And then second award, so he got the most awkward news break. He also gets the most awkward beef because Tom Brady just went after Baker Mayfield during this broadcast.
That's my kind of hate.
Yeah, that's my kind of hate today.
So during the week, I guess Mayfield said something about how the Bucs, when he arrived, just wanted him to be himself because everyone was kind of stressed out from the Brady years. So again, this was obviously pre-planned. They showed the Mayfield quote on the screen. And then Brady has this, it's so obvious that he like practiced this and was like, should I say this? Should I say this? And he says he thought stress was not having Super Bowl rings and that if he wanted to have fun, he would take his kids to Disneyland. And this went on.
We know that's not true, Tom. We know that's not true. If you wanted to have fun, you would report back to training camp. That's your idea of fun.
Exactly. So it was weird. It was pre-planned. And meanwhile, Baker Mayfield is just on fire. He's carving up the Eagles defense. He's not even breaking a sweat. He's like 12 for 13. And I don't know. I didn't jot down every Brady comment, but I swear Brady didn't compliment one of his throws as they're going up 24-0. He's just like, Chris Godwin, one of the best teammates I've ever had. Mike Evans, incredible receiver. And then Jalen Hurts makes one throw and he goes, that's an A+ throw from Jalen Hurts. Meanwhile, Mayfield can't miss, can't throw an incompletion. So awkward beef. I saw that he gave him some weird Fox award at the end of the broadcast, apparently, but he did not take kindly to that dig from Mayfield.
Good. It's starting to seem like Tom Brady isn't a fan of these system quarterbacks. I think he's tired of being lumped in with them his whole career. Because everyone, like every time you bring up the system quarterback, you're like, well, Tom Brady was a system quarterback.
Who says that? Who are these? Who's saying Tom Brady's a system quarterback?
Not that he's a system quarterback, but they're like every quarterback plays in a system. Like Tom Brady would just, he would throw short. He wouldn't be throwing downfield all the time, even though that's not really true. And I think Tom is fighting back against those allegations, and I think he's taking it out on the NFL's system quarterbacks around the league. He doesn't believe in these guys. Tom's a real quarterback. He did real quarterbacking. He didn't do this play action, quick passes out to the flat crap that Baker Mayfield's up to this year.
I just love him taking so much umbrage in this, as though we don't have eyes and did not see how clearly miserable everybody in Tampa Bay was in 2022. Like, seriously, we don't have to tell these lies. Like, everybody was ready for the Tom Brady experience to be over. Respectfully, the man embodied "my wife left me" for an entire year. Okay, I was about as bummed out a human being as I have ever seen going into a football season. And I think I would like to say that based on the way that they played throughout that year, and obviously injuries played a part in 2022 as well, but looking at the way they played throughout that year, that looked like a lot of people who were just ready for it to be over.
Can we rename the award you gave him to the "My Wife Left Me" award, Sheil?
Yeah.
Okay.
That works.
That's official.
I had forgotten about that season. You're right. They were a bunch of miserables that season. That was a tough watch. All right. Ruiz, you got anything else for us?
Yeah, I got an award for Derrick Carr, the I Know What You Are award, and it finally came out. I remember talking about his play under pressure the first 2 weeks. First 2 weeks, he averaged 1.3 EPA per drop back against pressure. He was averaging 18 yards per drop back against pressure. Last 2 weeks, negative 0.33 EPA per play and 2 yards per play when under pressure. This was his first game today. They lost to the Falcons 26-24. The Saints did. This was his first game in negative EPA. And it just goes to show quarterbacks don't change their strikes. If you're bad under pressure, it takes more than 2 games to prove that you aren't. And Derek Carr, the last 2 weeks, has been the Derek Carr that we all know and love, or that we all know and hate to watch. He's been that quarterback for the last 2 weeks. And I'm taking back all the nice things I said about the Saints offense over those first 2 weeks. And I'm also handing out a different award to Sam Darnold, and it's called the You're Next Award. Your time's coming.
Oh, my God. That was actually, I was watching the ESPN programming, and Teddy Bruschi he said this was going to be the Cyndi Lauper game for Sam Darnold, where he was going to show his true He didn't. Sam Darnold might have to clap back like Tom Brady did.
He did try.
Yeah, it wasn't for lack of effort.
Okay. There you go. Derek Carr and the Saints, go down to the Falcons. Falcons, one of 3 teams that did not score an offensive touchdown in week 4, and they come away with the victory, 26-24 over the New Orleans Saints. All right, Diante, what do you got?
All right, my next one is the All Grown Up Award, and I'm giving that to Justin Fields this week, who looks like he might actually be turning into a real viable quarterback. And a lot of this,
Tell
I
me
think,
about
is set
this.
up.
I had no eyes on this. The box score looked good. I was like, what's going on with the Steelers and Justin Fields today?
I will say, like, there was definitely a moment where I thought it was all going to go bad. I'm sure Steven saw the play. It's late in the half. I think he's trying to get away from pressure. He bails out, does a typical Justin Fields thing. Instead of just throwing the ball away and aborting the down, he tries to reverse field, loses his footing, and fumbles the ball. And this is a key situation where you have a giveaway. And I'm just looking and I'm like, oh, I know Mike Tomlin just can't wait to get in the press conference and just beat him down about protecting the football. And to his credit, he came right back from that and got right back to playing on schedule, being accurate with the ball. I think that we're starting to see more and more now of him taking chances outside the numbers when he gets one-on-one coverage, and they were converting a lot of those today. They probably score and they probably win this game if not for the George Pickens fumble in the red zone. But they have been driving basically all game, and that's without really having much of a run game with Najee Harris in there. They basically had to bench him in lieu of Cordarrelle Patterson for them to get anything in between the tackles today. So I really liked what I saw from Justin Fields in and out of the pocket. Again, this is another game where outside of that sack strip, you don't really see him panicking under pressure. He's still standing tall in the pocket, delivering the ball in the middle of the field and being very smart with his decision making and much more accurate than we saw the last 2 years in Chicago. I'm very, very encouraged by what I'm seeing. And I think that based off of what I saw today, this actually might be a pretty sticky performance for him going forward.
Yeah, I think one of the big factors too was that he scrambled this week, and he hadn't been scrambling effectively the first couple of weeks, and he did scramble. I know the Steelers ended up losing this game, but I would be encouraged for the same reasons that Diante said, and maybe the fact that they've finally given up on Harris as the focal point of the run game. I think they should lean into more field stuff. And Cordarrelle Patterson. I think Zaire Franklin tweeted after the game, he called Harris soft and said 84 runs way better than he does. So maybe making this switch will add another element to the Steelers offense that they've been lacking, in an element that we all expected them to have. We expected an Arthur Smith offense to be able to run the football, especially one with this quarterback at the helm. Maybe we see that going forward. And if that's the case, this could end up as a blip in the Steelers season. I still think they have a chance of making the playoffs. I don't think they're going to win the AFC North, especially with what Baltimore looked like on Sunday night, but the wild card is still very much in play.
Yeah, it's so weird because their first loss, but probably their most encouraging performance if you're just zooming out and saying, what can this season be? Justin Fields goes 22 for 34 for 312 yards, 9.2 yards per attempt. I mean, that's just like, we haven't seen many box scores like that from Justin Fields from his time in the NFL. And to your point, Ruiz, 10 carries for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns. Anthony Richardson leaves this game for the Colts with a hip injury, and Joe Flacco comes in. And I think Jonathan Taylor had an ankle injury in this game, as well as the Colts are now 2-2. They get the victory, 27-24, but some injury stuff for them to figure out going forward. All right. I'm up. I got one more. The I'm not quite ready to use the Undertaker GIF award goes to my Cincinnati Bengals. They beat the Panthers 34-24. But my goodness, this was a tight game. This was 31-24 with 4 minutes left. Joe Burrow threw an interception. It was a weird play where he and Jamar Chase, it was a scramble drill, and just he was expecting Jamar Chase to do one thing, and Jamar Chase did another thing. So initially it was like, what are you doing? And then they showed the replay. You could kind of understand why he threw that interception, but they were able to get the stops and kick a field goal. Just that defense is still that defense, and Andy Dalton was having a good game for most of this. He missed a throw here and there, but the Panthers offense looked, again, way more competent than it had at any point with Bryce Young. And there really was a chance. Miles Sanders broke a run in this game. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on in this game? There was a chance that they blew it. And I think the Bengals now face the Ravens next week with the Ravens playing like they did today. So that running game against what I've seen from this Bengals defense is a scary proposition. Yeah, that's a 1:00 game next week. Bengals host the Ravens. Offense has looked like the offense has looked. I mean, it's actually been a very consistent. It's not the most explosive version they've ever had, but Jamar Chase had an incredible catch and run. T. Higgins looked good in this game. They got contributions from Yoshivas and Chase Brown. They're running the ball well. They're third in offensive success rate for the season. So the offense can move the football, but digging that hole and seeing that defense, we all know I don't know how to use a GIF anyway. Like even if I wanted to use the Undertaker GIF, I would have to text someone and say, how do I use this in a tweet? I don't think I've ever used a GIF in a tweet, but I don't even need to send those messages along anymore. I can just be an old man and not use one.
You need help with a GIF? It's an image.
I know how to text the GIF. I don't think I know how to tweet the GIF. Ruiz looks as disappointed in me as he was proud of Tom Brady for ripping Baker Mayfield. That's as proud as I've seen Ruiz, and this is as disappointed as he's been. I
don't even know how to respond. I can't even fathom the problem you're having from getting from step A to step B. It's one of the more simple things.
Right, maybe next week.
We need to talk.
The next week, if the Bengals beat the Ravens.
I have a take. I think this is performative old man behavior.
No, you can search it. Diante, you can search my tweets.
This is fraudulent.
I've never used a GIF in text. I've never used one in a tweet.
He wishes he could. He just hasn't been able to.
I'm sure I could. All right. If the Bengals, I'm not going to do it now. I was about to do it next week. If the Bengals win, live on the show. I'm tweeting out a GIF. There you go. Something to look forward to next week. All right. Those are all my awards. Do you guys have any more?
No.
We got some time if you got any.
I do not have any awards for the Browns and Raiders game.
Okay.
That's exactly where mine is at. And this is the Get Your House Appraised Award going to Kevin Stefanski. And not honestly, and this is not his fault. But if you look at how Deshaun Watson performed today, this was probably one of his better performances on the whole, and it was still a train wreck in so many ways, especially in the fourth quarter when they needed him to get the ball where he needed to get it to. Obviously, they lose 7 points. Wide open, Amari Cooper throw comes back for a hold. That was a huge play. They definitely were deflated the rest of the way. But just going through Deshaun Watson's game log and looking at how he's performed when he's been pressured throughout his stint with the Browns, this would be his 5th best by EPA, and it's still heavily in the negative and clearly not viable enough for them to be able to get away with what they need to while this running game has struggled the way that it has. And I'm sure, and one of the reasons why I'm giving this to Kevin Stefanski is because I can't imagine anything more depressing for him than watching this team just run into a brick wall, snap after snap after snap on the ground. In a game where you should be able to get something going because they were able to stuff what the Raiders have been trying to do with the run game all year long. And this is something that I think might end up getting in the way for Antonio Pierce in the future as well. But I just don't see how they're going to create a viable offensive identity around what they've got right now. If this is as good as it's going to get for Deshaun Watson, and if we're looking at how he's performed the last 2 years, this is about as good as he can play.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I hadn't looked at his box score. I felt the same way you did. I was like, this one wasn't totally on Watson. He actually made some nice, that would have been an 82-yard touchdown if they didn't get the hold on the center. The interception bounced off of Amari Cooper, and I was like, I didn't. Right. And he's 24 for 32 for 176 yards, 5.5 yards per attempt, took 3 sacks in this game. You mentioned it. Jerome Ford had the one big run towards the end. Other than that, they couldn't do anything. There was a point where Deshaun Watson was kind of going at it with the right tackle, DeJuan Jones, for a blown assignment. That, to some degree, I get it. Deshaun Watson has been beat up pretty good this season. On the other hand, he doesn't make life easy for those offensive linemen either. So I like that one. All right, so Kevin Stefanski put the house on the market in Cleveland. And Diante, you know where Kevin Stefanski is from, don't you?
I'm saying this for a reason. Everything I'm saying is for a reason.
Okay.
I'm sure, if he ever spends some time on YouTube and looks at the highlights around the league, I'm sure he's going to see some Saquon Barkley wriggling through in the second half against Tampa Bay and says, hey, man, I miss the days when I could rely on my offensive line to create some space, and I had a running back that can create space where there was none. Wouldn't that be nice to have that and an A.J. Brown? I'm just saying, man.
Hey,
I'm just saying.
I can throw my phone with no GIF on it over there, and it's going to land not too far away from where Kevin Stefanski grew up. And analytics, forward-thinking coach from the area. Got some
doesn't
of the
want player personnel control, so
doesn't want
that kind of fits what the front office in Philadelphia is asking for.
Well, listen to your game management. Say, I don't know.
Has
all right, we're
experience
planting some
working around a
seeds.
bad quarterback contract.
Oh my gosh!
Gotta slip that in there.
Listen, I'm just the way things are going. It wouldn't be the biggest shocker in the world. All right, we will finish on that one. Thank you to Diante Lee and Stephen Ruiz. Thank you to Christopher Sutton for producing. Additional production supervision by Conor Nevins, Arjuna Ramgopal, and our friend Dan Comer, who's with us right now. We'll be back later this week on the Ringer NFL Show.